What are the three dimensions of power? That is the question for this video. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Perspective Philosophy, where we try to better our perceptions of the world through philosophical discussion. Today we are going to be discussing the three dimensions of power, and this is a theory of power discussed by a guy called Luke. This analysis of power is very important. To understand the forms of power, to understand the way that power affects us, will allow us to understand whether power is acting, how power is acting on us, and whether it can be justified or not. And it also allows us to understand how we can reject or accept certain forms of power, or even create power ourselves. So when we're acting, how we are influencing other people. So to begin, we're going to be analysing the three dimensions of power, and these are direct power, political power, and normative power. The reason we're going to be doing this is to understand how these forms of power affect you day to day, how you can understand whether these forms of power are justified or not, and how, if you can, possibly affect these forms of power when they are affecting you, like whether you can do anything about these authorities. The first dimension of power is the form of power we are most acquainted with day to day, and that is direct power. So direct power is when an individual influences another directly, so they use authority over someone. So this would be like a king affecting the subject, commanding them what to do, or if someone was to put a gun to someone's head, they would be directly affecting that individual. They'd be directly using authority to manipulate the individual's actions. So direct power is pretty simple to understand. It is an individual influencing another individual by use of force. It's as easy as that. By use of force, you've been able to override the will of another. So you might want to do one thing, I'll make you do another. You might want to do something, I might stop you from doing it, blah, blah, blah. Really easy. An example would be a court summons in day-to-day life. So if you want to know how that might affect you, if you've got a court summons or if you're arrested by the police, that is direct power. Your will has been overcome by an authority. So the second dimension of power, what is that? Political power. So this is the control over political discourse. This is the control over what can be discussed day to day within the political system within your society. So if you live in, let's say, a society where it's nationalistic, it might not allow you to discuss a globalized understanding of the world. Or if, let's say, you are living in a society that's a capitalist society, there may not be enough political discourse on alternatives to capitalism or even regulated capitalism. This is easily observable in the lobbying, especially in the American political system, where corporations can use their influence to change what can be discussed within Congress. So an example would be Congress is going to raise whether cigarettes should be illegal. A corporation may directly lobby that and prevent that discourse, and therefore has affected power over the individuals within society by preventing that discussion from ever being able to occur. This thus making it impossible to actually express freedom. So this is what Bachrach and Bartas call the rules of the game. So this is what you can and cannot discuss within your political sphere. Okay. Luke's really describes this best though when he says, power is also exercised when A devotes his energies to creating or reinforcing social and political values and institutional practices that limit the scope of political process to public consideration of only those issues which are comparatively innocuous to A. So if you create an institutional environment in which you're incapable of discussing, let's say, socialism, because the only things that are discussed are the economy in a capitalist format, then you have been you are receiving an authoritative power over you. That is the second dimension of power. The third dimension of power is where I most enjoy. It is the form of power which is perhaps the most present to you day to day. It is perhaps the most important form of power you can understand, because this form of power creates who you are. It creates your identity. It creates how you're able to understand yourself within society and express your desires and your interests. So the third dimension of power is given to you by norms and conventions. It's how you understand to express yourself, and it is how you've been socialized day to day. It is given to you through institutional formats, through marketing, through various other forms, in which I will discuss in another video relating to Foucault, discipline and punish, and power, and also in marketing and how we are affected day to day through hypnoid suggestion and how that can modify our behaviors. However, in this, what you have to understand simply is that this power exists. So they have, when I say they, I mean society, has the power to influence your desires, to give you desires and to modify your desires depending on what is conventionally accepted and not accepted. So if something is considered normal or abnormal, it will modify your behavior to adhere to it, depending upon the social institutions in which you exist. So if you exist in, let's say, the workplace, you will understand how to behave within the workplace by the conventions and the norms of how people act within that environment. The same with schools, hospitals, and other disciplinary formats, which is Foucault. But also on a broader scale, when you talk about marketing, you will understand self-expression through these formats. So how do you express your individuality? You express it by buying this product. Now, these are normative. This is normative power. This is how power is able to create you as an individual. And Luke describes this really well. Luke describes this in two instances. And the first one is simply, but also the exercise of a power over him by influencing, shaping, or determining his very wants. So that's just explaining that it's creating your desires or modifying or influencing your desires in relative to the social spheres in which you exist. Now, this is not necessarily a hierarchical power structure. There doesn't need to be an individual telling you how to feel. This is something that is conventional. It's something that you will understand in relation to other individuals in your society and has been, will be socialized within you. And is something that you will gain with social experience. Luke's really outlines the importance of this sphere of power and understanding it when he says, but this is to ignore the crucial point that the most effective and insidious use of power is to prevent such conflict from arising in the first place. So the reason he says that is because you won't be actually capable of affecting the second dimension of power or the first if your desires have been given to you, have been modified, if you understand yourself in a normative format which suits an insidious agenda. So if you talk about an authoritative structure, regardless of powers A and B, you can become aware of them and take action against them. However, with normative power, the third dimension of power, you actually have to change who you are, change your identity, and change how you understand the world. Now, this is very difficult and not necessarily useful, depending upon what you are trying to overthrow. Now, to summarize, there are three dimensions of power: direct power, political power, and normative power. Each affects you day to day in different ways, and normative power influences your whole being. Political power influences how you can express yourself day to day, and authoritative power is when someone directly overpowers your will. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. This was to describe what is the three dimensions of power and really try and engage you in understanding how power may be affecting you day to day. I will be discussing other avenues in which power is affecting you more directly, in which I'll be discussing, normative power with Foucault and Deleuze in marketing, and I'll be discussing how to understand whether authority is right or wrong with Gadamer, and how to rationalize that. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Leave a comment and just tell me, how do you think power is affecting you day to day? And as always, try to gain some perspective. Just as a little snippet, I am now doing YouNow broadcasts every night at between the hours of 7 and 10 p.m. I would give a more exact time, but my schedule cannot be boiled down to an exact number, I'm afraid. But head over to YouNow and find me at Perspective Philosophy. Have a nice day.